You think rockets and AI are impressive technology? Well, wait until you get a load of Manscaped's new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, the next generation trimmer with interchangeable blade heads for whatever shave you can imagine. Upgrade your grooming game to the Ultra Sphere this year by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with code SKILLUP. High tech for low places, thanks to Manscaped. Gamers, how y'all doing? I'm doing pretty good, thank you for asking. With the excesses of release season now behind us, I've been finding a little more work-life balance. Good timing too, since it's starting to warm up a little here in Sydney, and it's nice to get outside from time to time. I'm still playing games and staying on top of the news, of course. I mean, just this week we had more news on the Bungie layoffs. We had Blizzcon, where Blizzard announced like 18 World of Warcraft expansions, and we got a truckload of Xbox news, since Microsoft are making all sorts of moves in relation to Activision Blizzard, Game Pass, Halo, Bethesda, and more. It's a good spread of news this week. I think you'll like this episode. Alright, that's enough time at first base. Time to make our move. Here comes the news. Let's start by circling back to that Bungie news. You'll recall that last week the studio sacked over 100 of its staff. They communicated internally Destiny 2 was on track to miss its revenue targets by 45%, and that player sentiment and retention was at an all-time low. They also delayed the Final Shape expansion into June, though that hasn't been officially confirmed yet, and they also delayed their upcoming Extraction Shooter Marathon into 2025, though that too has not been publicly confirmed yet. Since we covered the news last week, Bungie has gone on to issue their own statement that they call Our Path Forward. Quote, "This has been one of the most difficult weeks in our studio's history as we parted ways with people we respect and admire. We spent this week supporting one another, including those who are at the studio, as well as friends and colleagues who no longer are. We want to acknowledge the feedback and concerns you have about Lightfall and recent seasons, as well as your responses to the reveal of the Final Shape. We know we have lost a lot of your trust. Destiny needs to surprise and delight. We haven't done that enough, and that's going to change," end quote. They did go on to talk about their desire to see the Final Shape expansion be the best one yet, eclipsing the Taken King, Forsaken, and the Witch Queen. In the case of Forsaken, that's a very tall order, since that expansion was loaded with content thanks to the contribution of other studios co-developing Destiny at the time. Unclear how Bungie planned to top that, but it'd certainly be nice to see them do it. Outside of this, Paul Tassi was able to speak to a number of sources who confirmed additional details about how the layoff announcement played out. He learned that Sony did initiate the call for spending cuts, but left Bungie to execute on that, with Bungie management deciding on redundancies, despite promising just 18 months ago that it would not do that. Many staff found themselves locked out of email and messaging systems before being informed that they were laid off, while others found out on Twitter. It's not easy to get these processes right, but that right there is a perfect example of how to fuck it up entirely. As for why this happened, that 45% shortfall versus forecast is apparently partly due to the targets being unrealistic, but it's also a reflection of the current state of the game. Tassi confirmed that Lightfall was a very negative turning point for Destiny 2, as player engagement dropped off hard owing to that expansion's very negative reception, the seasonal model feeling rather stale, and the PvP side of the game being essentially abandoned for years. One tidbit that surfaced from IGN's coverage is that Bungie CEO Pete Parsons allegedly told staff after the layoffs that Bungie had retained the right people to carry Destiny 2 forward, a truly insensitive comment to make, given that these layoffs were apparently cost-driven rather than merit-based. It follows his earlier tweets where he lamented the layoffs as though they were totally beyond his control, refusing to take responsibility for them despite the fact that he's literally the CEO. It's his watch, and it's also a complete reversal of the promise he made to staff 18 months ago. As for what's next, we await Bungie's official confirmation of the delay for both Final Shape and Marathon, with Bungie's silence on this leading some to speculate that the Final Shape may be delayed even further, perhaps targeting a Q3 or Q4 release while they look to further improve the offering. They do promise that they'll start speaking soon about all this stuff, so watch this space, I guess. By the way, if you want to deep dive into this whole thing, I sat down with 3 of Destiny 2's biggest content creators, Dado, Bife, and Aztec Cross. They joined the FPS podcast last week to discuss their reaction to the layoffs, their take on the current state of Destiny, and their hopes for both Destiny and Marathon into the future. It was a really awesome chat. I definitely recommend checking it out if you're a Destiny enjoyer. I'll leave a link to it below the like button. Turning now to BlizzCon, it happened this past weekend, the first time since Microsoft bought the company. To celebrate, Phil Spencer was there in the flesh, and he had some kind words for Blizzard and Blizzard fans. Quote, "We will nurture the essence of what has made Blizzard unique," end quote. Fair enough, can't argue with that, and to be fair, that has been Microsoft's approach thus far when it comes to other acquisitions, so there's every reason to suspect they'll continue that into the future. As for BlizzCon announcements, we got confirmation that the first Diablo expansion will be titled The Vessel of Hatred. It's due out at the back end of next year and will see us journey into the jungle world of Nahantu to pursue Mephisto. You might think that the jungle setting would see a return of the Witch Doctor class, but you'd be wrong, because Blizzard have said that there is a new class coming, but it's one that the franchise has never seen before, which really bums me out, because I want the Paladin back ASAP. The new class is rumored to be something called a Spiritborn, a nature-wielding class, but that's just a rumor at this point based on some data mining. Not for nothing, but I've actually continued to play Diablo 4 since launch, and I'm now playing through Season 2, and I'm really liking it. I get the complaints from the super hardcore Diablo community, but as someone who was just slowly working my way through each class, planning to level 1 each season, Diablo 4 is really working for me, and Blizzard are definitely putting in the work to build out the game in a way that's hopefully going to make the hardcore crowd happy one day. Except for the cash shop, of course, because those prices are truly embarrassing. Turning now to World of Warcraft, it got its moment in the sun as well, with Blizzard revealing not 1, not 2, but 3 new expansions. It's their effort to set up a saga, which they're calling World Soul, and its 3 expansions begin with one titled The War Within. It was revealed with a really excellent cinematic trailer featuring both Thrall and Anduin having a very tense, emotional exchange before panning up to reveal a big-ass sword. A lot of lore implications there for those who follows WoW's sprawling lore and storyline. That expansion will be out next year, no date provided on when the next 2 expansions will drop, but it'll probably be every 2 years like the current expansion cadence. WoW Classic is also getting some new stuff. Cataclysm is confirmed to be coming to the Classic experience, a controversial call since that was when many would argue the wheels started coming off the WoW experience. Blizzard did say they'd be making changes to Cataclysm, but weren't specific about what that meant, so we'll have to wait and see. They also announced Season of Discovery, which is a new way to experience Classic content that remixes classes, enemy designs, boss encounters, and more. It's sort of like a Classic Plus experience, riffing on the original game feel to deliver something new for an audience that likes that old school feeling. To be honest, it's actually really interesting, and with a level cap of 25, it's clearly aiming to be a more casual experience than the full leveling and endgame grind that scares a lot of people away from trying Classic WoW. There was also chatter about the idea of WoW coming to consoles. PC Gamer spoke to Holly Longdale, VP and executive producer of World of Warcraft, and they asked her if it was the technical barriers that hold WoW back from coming to consoles. She responded thusly, quote, "Well, it depends who you ask. I don't think it is. Frankly, I think we're pretty well positioned, which is kind of why we talk about it," end quote. She'd go on to clarify that it's absolutely not a priority at the moment as the team are focused on shipping this new multi-year saga, but she did end the exchange by saying, quote, "It would be very insincere to say that we're not, like, of course we're talking about that. We are Microsoft now," end quote. With a response like that, it feels like WoW on consoles is a matter of when and not if. It wasn't all good news for Blizzard this week though. The Jacob Wolf report is reporting that a vote is now underway involving the Overwatch League's 20 teams, and that vote is on whether or not to dissolve the league. Wolf is reporting that the vote is likely to be carried, at which point Microsoft would need to pay out $120 million in compensation across the 20 contracted teams. The competitive Overwatch scene will likely continue in some form though, as Wolf is reporting that Blizzard are working with the Saudi state-owned ESL to take over management of the league and deliver it under their umbrella. It's an ignoble end for what was the most expensive league in the history of esports, with Bobby Kotick selling spots for $20 million a pop, promising teams that Overwatch PvP would be the biggest game in the history of esports. That never made sense to me because Overwatch is not good to watch at all. It lacks the viewability of stuff like League of Legends and the tension of stuff like CSGO. Still, rich esports team owners ate it up, and now they're looking to cash out. One final Blizzard-related tidbit. Remember Greg Street, aka Ghostcrawler? He worked on WoW for years before leaving to work on Riot's upcoming MMO. He left that before shipping the product, and now he's announced that he's starting his own MMO with blackjack and hookers. No, I'm joking about that. At least I think I am. Who knows what his game contains? We do know that he's announced a new studio called Fantastic Pixel Castle, and they're developing a new AAA MMO codenamed Ghost. Given the dev time for MMOs, expect to hear more about this one in approximately 2030. Turning now to Xbox news, it's been a very mixed week for Team Green. Blizzcon certainly put some wind in their sails as most of the announcements went down a treat, but it follows some rockier news around things like Game Pass, accessories, Bethesda, and Halo. For Game Pass, it's been revealed that Game Pass subscriber growth has been removed from Microsoft CEO's Satya Nadella's performance metrics, a hint that Microsoft are looking to rein in growth projections after falling significantly short of growth targets this past year. They shot for 73% growth but only achieved 28%, and while the Activision Blizzard acquisition is likely to move the dial on that in the future, Nadella's pay packet will no longer go up or down depending on this outcome. It comes as Microsoft briefly flirted with the idea of removing Game Pass as a perk for Microsoft staff members. All Microsoft staff enjoy Game Pass Ultimate just for being a Microsoft employee, but there was a push to remove this from non-Xbox staff. Phil Spencer apparently wasn't consulted in this change, responding to an internal forum post saying that he was looking into it. Sure enough, Phil's intervention saw the change reverted. All Microsoft staff get to keep their Game Pass subscriptions. good guy Phil saves the day once again. It's a little more complicated a situation when we talk about Xbox's approach to third-party accessories. Recently, Xbox initiated a policy change that prohibits the use of any Xbox peripheral that hasn't been explicitly approved by Microsoft. So controllers, keyboards, mics, mice, and anything else that plugs into an Xbox or a controller will need to be Microsoft approved. This is complicated because the change has some serious downsides but also some positives. In the cons column, we've got the fact that many of the controllers you've already purchased will no longer work and may never work unless Microsoft greenlights them. There's also a number of adapters that allow you to use retro controllers or fighting sticks, and they too would cease functioning unless Microsoft approves them. On the plus side, this change does allow Microsoft to ban stuff like XIM or Zim or Cronus Max, which are adapters that allow you to use a keyboard and mouse while telling your Xbox that you're actually using a controller. This is a big problem in competitive first-person shooters, where keyboard and mouse provides a huge advantage over controllers, especially when paired with the auto-aim that usually kicks in when a controller is detected. Still, if these devices are the target for this, it seems like a very wide broadside when something more surgical would have sufficed. There's also speculation that this could relate to Microsoft greenlighting more wireless third-party controllers, since most of them at the moment are wired. We won't know until Microsoft releases official comms on this, which should be sometime this month. Perhaps the most interesting Xbox news this week is the elevation of Matt Booty to the head of Bethesda's publishing activities. Booty was already head of Microsoft's first-party publishing efforts, and Bethesda had their own head of publishing who just retired. Rather than replacing that person with a new head of publishing, Xbox effectively restructured things, drawing a dotted line from Bethesda directly to Booty. An internal memo obtained by The Verge indicates that there are a number of Bethesda leaders who will now report directly to a Microsoft counterpart, hinting that the days of Bethesda's full independence are over. The news comes as Bethesda begins the process of delivering major updates for Starfield, which has languished post-launch and has now hit 50% mixed on Steam according to reviews for the past 30 days. Bethesda say that an update about to go into beta will deliver the much-requested DLSS, a feature sorely missing at launch that had to be added in using third-party mods. They also promise better HDR support to address how washed out the game often feels, as well as other optimization and improvements. While Starfield may be struggling with audiences, it certainly had the intended effect when it comes to Game Pass subscriptions. Last week, Satya Nadella announced in an earnings call that Starfield resulted in the single largest spike in subscriptions in the history of the service, a not unsurprising result given how much hype there was for the title and how cheaply you could get your hands on it thanks to Game Pass. Some people would have been eligible for that like $1 trial thing. Imagine getting Starfield for $1. Even if you're not a fan of it, you gotta admit that's a pretty good deal. Last bit of Microsoft news, Halo is doing well for itself lately, the latest season bringing players back after a disappointing launch saw them leave in droves. Sadly though, a lot of that excitement is being overshadowed by some hefty price increases at the cash shop. Halo Infinite's in-game spending has long been a sore point ever since the game went free to play with this iteration, many frustrated at having to purchase things that were at one point earnable for free. Well, it got worse this week as 343 began rejigging the way that cosmetic items apply to different armor pieces, with the net effect being that the price went up on a number of things. 343's community manager did their best to explain it in a lengthy post, but people weren't really buying it since people felt like Halo's cash shop was already asking for too much. A final chunk of news to finish up on, Remedy. They are riding very high right now off the back of Alan Wake 2, a critical darling, though it's unclear at this point how it's fared on the sales front, especially being exclusive to the Epic Games Store on PC and not offering any physical versions on console. Regardless, Remedy are thinking about what's coming next, and were very candid about their plans in a note to investors. On the topic of Control 2, they said, quote, Control 2 continues in the proof of concept stage. The plans for the sequel are ambitious, and we have seen good progress both in the designs and in the game build, end quote. When it comes to Max Payne 1 and 2 remakes, they didn't hold back either. Quote, Max Payne 1 and 2 remake progressed into the production readiness stage. We have gained clarity on the style and scope of the game, and we have an exceptionally well-organized team working on it. With these accomplishments, we are excited about the project and its future success, end quote. They did talk about two other projects they have in the works, one of them titled Project Condor, and it's a live service game. And yeah, I don't know, man, I just want Remedy to keep making offline single-player stuff for weirdos like me, but hopefully Remedy managed to bring their unique touch to a business model that can often feel a little safe and samey. Speaking of all that, did you catch this week's episode of the Friends Per Second podcast? If you didn't, then you missed our chat with the Alan Wake 2 game directors, Sam Lake and Carl Rowley. We had a fascinating chat where they revealed that they nearly cut the single best sequence in the entire game, and also the fact that they too rely on fan-made wikis when trying to make sense of their own game lore. It was a real highlight interview, one of my favorite of the year in fact. If you want to check it out, I'll leave a link to it below the like button. A quick lightning round to finish off. Fortnite is kind of popular. Again, I mean, it's always been stupidly popular, but now it's returned to the stratospheric popularity it enjoyed at its launch by returning to its launch. The new OG update brings back the original game map and turns back the clock in a variety of ways, and the results are pretty eye-watering. 44 million players on day one, making it the biggest single day in Fortnite's history. It comes just a few months after Epic Games laid off hundreds of staff, saying that the company was losing money. Would genuinely be very interested to see that profit and loss statement after seeing a game pull these sorts of numbers in a single day, while also owning and operating the most ubiquitous game engine. Speaking of job cuts, Embracer Group are back at it. They've already laid off hundreds of people after their House of Cards investment strategy collapsed, and just this week they've laid off a few more. The exact number is unclear, but Cryptic Studios, who developed Neverwinter Nights, have lost at least a few developers, with several people confirming a reduction in force. Embracer have made it clear that there will be many more job cuts to come as they try to stabilize themselves after their deal with the Saudis fell through, and so far the only idea they've managed to come up with is sack more staff, so it looks like they'll just keep doing that for a while yet. Embracer's acquisitions haven't paid off, but so far Devolver Digital's have, and just this week they announced another. They've snatched up System Era, makers of the excellent Astroneer. They promise to continue their work on Astroneer while also developing an all-new title. Interesting the way that System Era framed the announcement. Quote, "We don't shed independence lightly, but with Devolver, we don't think System Era is losing independence. We think it's finding a home among a like-minded confederation of talented people under a banner that is synonymous with the indie ethos, and we can't wait to continue our journey together," end quote. So far, I kind of agree that that's exactly the way that Devolver have been approaching things. Long may that approach remain. Crytek have publicly stated that they'll never do a Hunt Showdown 2, similar to the way that Blizzard farted out Overwatch 2. That's good, because Hunt is perfect and it should be protected. And also because Overwatch 2 is one hell of a cautionary tale for how to mess up both the sequel and a franchise. Those of you thirsty for some Elden Ring DLC news, I ain't got much, but I got something. This week, FromSoft's parent company said in an earnings call that development on the DLC was, quote, "progressing smoothly," end quote. That's literally all I got. I told you it wasn't much. Speaking of teasers, IO Interactive have gently begun massaging the hype muscles for their upcoming Bond game. In the latest issue of Edge magazine, shout out to Edge by the way, great publication, IO CEO Hakan Abron confirmed that the title is still some years away, but he did describe it as the ultimate spycraft fantasy. Edge also had this to say, quote, "The few other breadcrumbs we're able to pick up in the office suggest a tone closer to Daniel Craig than Roger Moore, and perhaps more scripted experience than Hitman's freeform jaunts," end quote. Scripted Bond set pieces crossed with a Hitman sandbox? Yes please, sign me up. Ubisoft have just announced the end of update support for Far Cry 6. This is shocking because who the hell thought they were still working on updates for Far Cry 6? I do wonder if Far Cry 7 is currently in development, and if so, what they might do with it. I feel like we all collectively hit a wall with 6, where even people like myself who are fond of the series were like, okay, that's enough, it's time for a reboot. It's Ubisoft though, so any reboot is likely to be a live service Far Cry where we all skin animals to collect rare NFTs. I really shouldn't have said that. I don't want to give them any ideas. And finally, Sega posted an internal Q&A on their website where they set some pretty big goals for their little blue furball. Osamu Ohashi is the division manager for the part of Sega that oversees Sonic, and he says, quote, "Simply put, I want to surpass Mario. Sonic is a game that was originally developed to compete with Mario, and it still hasn't achieved that goal. Our goal is to catch up and surpass Mario because we respect Mario," end quote. Having personally played both Sonic Frontiers and Mario Wonder, I would say that that is a very aspirational goal, and I wish Sega the very best of luck with it. So, what got announced or delayed this week? Well, big news, Enshrouded finally got an early access release date. If you haven't been following this one, it's looking to be the next big survival haymaker, a genre that's never had any difficulty in delivering massively popular titles, from V-Rising to Valheim to Grounded and literally dozens more. Enshrouded has been on a lot of people's radar since its announcement, and the recent Steam Next Fest demo was the most played of any demo by a country mile. Positive feedback across the board. This one looks absolutely rigged to blow up in the best possible way, especially thanks to its release timing, which is now locked in for January 24th. A nice clear runway, given that there isn't much else coming out around then. It'll be exclusive to PC at first, no word yet on an eventual console release, but it looks extremely likely given how much interest there is on this one. Fresh off the success of Quantum Era, the developers have announced/threatened that a sequel is in the works. Quantum Error released exclusive to PS5 last week, and it achieved a weak 42 on OpenCritic, with scores as low as 2 out of 10 from some publications. Regardless, the developers are undeterred. They had initially announced a Quantum Error trilogy, and it looks like they're going to see that through, whether we like it or not. Literally. Here's something interesting. There's a new 3D Sonic game on the way. The twist is that it's exclusive to the Apple Arcade, so you literally can't play it unless you own an Apple device. Plus, you need to sign up to their subscription service. The new title is called Sonic Dream Team, and it looks low-key excellent, with a fantastic visual style and color palette that was sorely missing from Sonic Frontiers' open-world areas, as well as a full roster of playable characters. It's not uncommon for Apple Arcade exclusives to eventually end up on other storefronts, but it does usually take some time, upwards of a year. For now, if you do own an Apple device and are willing to shell out a few bucks, you can start playing this one on December 5th. And finally, the biggest announcement of the week is the Bloodborne announcement we've all been waiting for. That is right! Bloodborne Kart Racer's release date. You thought I was going to say Bloodborne Remastered, didn't you? Don't be ridiculous. We're more likely to get Half-Life 3 than a Bloodborne remaster at this point, so just let it go. You will take Bloodborne Kart and you will be glad for it, because as a fan-made project, if this involved almost any other company, they'd have shut this shit down faster than you can say, "It's a me." Bloodborne Kart arrives exclusive to PC on January 31st. It genuinely looks incredible, and I can't believe someone did this. God bless them. So what came out last week? Well, you might recall that it was an absolutely mammoth week of releases with over 20 new games hitting shelves or your hard drive or subscription services or whatever else. Can't do a review roundup for all of them, but we'll do what we can. Kicking things off is Song of Nunu, a League of Legends story, the latest from the Riot Forge label. Nunu seems to be absolutely no exception to that label's very strong track record, as it debuted to an overwhelmingly positive 95% on Steam. Critics are less hyped about it, but they still scored it a strong and respectable 77. Press Start scored this one an 8, saying, quote, "A rough opening chapter segues into an impeccably paced experience that's short, sweet, wholesome, and all too easy to play," end quote. Achilles, Legends Untold is that isometric Souls-like, starring the mythical warrior himself. A decent early access period has led into a similarly decent launch, with the title sitting at a mostly positive 73% on Steam, and critics have it at a similar spot, a fair 71 on OpenCritic. The Sixth Axis seemed to really enjoy it, scoring at a 7 and saying, quote, "The Greek myths have been plundered by video game developers to such a large degree it's hard to conceive that a fresh take could even be possible. Remarkably, Achilles Legends Untold offers just that. This action adventure might be a little rough around the edges, but that arguably adds to its charm. If you can put up with some nasty difficulty spikes, then you'll find a remarkable world of myths and legends to explore," end quote. Even the positive reviews all point to a need for a bit more polish, so if this one does interest you, you may want to wait a little longer for some additional updates and improvements to roll through. My Time at Sandrock seems to have done fairly well for itself after its lengthy early access. It's that cutesy survival build crafting game with an ambitious single-player campaign bolted onto it. It hit 1.0 last week and is now sitting at an impressive 88, very positive on Steam. Critics are definitely less enthused, with the title sitting at a fair 73 on OpenCritic, but that number has been massively dragged down by the Switch port, which is apparently suffering from a raft of technical issues. It looks to be a pretty safe purchase on PC. Reviews there are generally around the 8 out of 10 mark, but the Switch scores are averaging 5 out of 10 or less. If you are keen for a handheld experience, maybe check it out on Steam Deck instead. Biggest release of the week, at least for anyone with any taste, was the RoboCop video game Rogue City, developed by 80s and 90s action movies enjoyers Teon. So this one kind of came in exactly where I expected it to, in that the critic scores have it at a fair 71, but the punters on Steam have this at 92% very positive. And yeah, I can totally see both of those numbers being legit. I'm playing through this one right now, and it's definitely got some problems, and I don't think the Teon have a complete grasp on the source material, but there's just enough here that it works, and it's certainly a much better RoboCop 3 than the movie, because Lord above, RoboCop 3 was an absolute dumpster fire of a movie if ever there was one. I do plan to review this at the end of the week, because as the world's #1 RoboCop influencer, it is one of my prime directives. Don't ask me what the other 3 are, and the 4th one's a secret. Keep an eye out for that video at the end of the week, or just subscribe and ding the bell so you get a handy notification when that goes live. Moving right along, Star Ocean, the second R, has absolutely blown people away. Seen a huge amount of love for this one on social media, with some people calling it one of the greatest JRPG remasters we've ever seen. Squeenix really pulled out all the stops on this one, resulting in an overwhelmingly positive 96% on Steam, as well as a mighty 85 on OpenCritic. Whether you're a long-time fan of the series or looking to see where it all began, this looks like a pretty fantastic get. Speaking of good gets, the Talos Principle 2 dropped last week, and boy howdy has it done well for itself. It's also sitting at 95% overwhelmingly positive on Steam, a mighty 88 on OpenCritic, 100% of critics recommending it. A very sturdy 4 out of 5 from Eurogamer, who said of it, quote, "The Talos Principle 2 is an ambitious sequel that explores bold, if unambiguous territory in its philosophical robot puzzling," end quote. PC Gamer, usually hard to please, but not so here, scoring at an 89 and saying, quote, "Not just a great sequel, but a thoughtful and human narrative adventure wrapped in a satisfying and beautiful puzzle game," end quote. Honestly, wasn't planning to check this one out, but now I think I'll have to. Big congrats to Crow Team for this one. Thirsty Suitors is yet another new release, sitting at 95% positive on Steam, though far fewer reviews in for this one. Critics also rate it, putting it a strong 80. IGN scored this one an 8 out of 10, saying, quote, "The story can feel a bit rushed at times, but cooking under the pressure of a judgmental family and reconciling with exes through exaggerated battles makes Thirsty Suitors very worthwhile," end quote. Nintendo released a new WarioWare game last week. Not a lot of marketing pump behind it though. Perhaps that was because it's just kind of okay, sitting at a fair 74 on OpenCritic. Quite a few reviews say it's good, but the Joy-Cons just aren't up to the task. Like GameSpot's review, they scored it a 6 out of 10 and said, quote, "WarioWare Move It maintains the series' zany sense of humor and experimentation, but it often asks more than the Joy-Con motion controllers can handle," end quote. And finally, The Invincible is a narrative-led sci-fi walking sim from a bunch of former CD Projekt Red developers. No Steam reviews up for this one yet at the time of writing, but critics are pretty lukewarm on it, the title sitting at a fair 71 on OpenCritic. I didn't get a chance to play this one, but Austin did, and he didn't want to do an entire video on it, but he did want to say something about it, so here it is.
So I played and finished The Invincible last week. Didn't feel it warranted its own dedicated video, but thought I'd share my thoughts here. The Invincible is the debut title from studio Starfield Industries, based on a Polish novel of the same name. It's a linear, narrative-driven walking sim in the very literal sense. There's almost no puzzles, platforming, shooting, exploration, etc. It's mostly about pushing forward, clicking prompts, and picking dialogue as you unravel the mysteries of this alien world that you and your crew have crash-landed on. I will say, it is quite an engrossing story, mostly on account of fantastic voice acting. The really natural line delivery of the main characters made them feel so real, so likable. Their conversations were a joy to listen to, and you'll come to deeply understand their personalities, agendas, and thought process. Unfortunately though, in my opinion, it does not stick the landing. Pardon the pun. No matter which ending you get, they all conclude rather abruptly. A real shame given just how much I was invested in this story up to that point. For that reason, I wouldn't recommend buying this at full price, but if you're keen for a short and immersive 6 to 8 hour sci-fi romp with some great dialogue, nice vistas, and a funky retro future aesthetic, it might be worth picking up on sale or through Game Pass if it becomes available there.
So what's coming out this week? Well, it's definitely a lot quieter than last week, but there's still some really great stuff in here. Stuff like Risk of Rain Returns. It's a remaster of the original 2D Risk of Rain game, only it brings in characters, enemies, and power-ups that were introduced in the sequel. Having not played the first game, I am very excited for this one. It arrives for PC and the Switch today, no word yet on a PlayStation or Xbox release. RGG fans, your king has returned. Kiryu Saga was once thought done, but how could they let any character with that much charisma sail off into the sunset? Enter Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name, a one-shot spin-off title that tells an all-new story in Kiryu's journey, keeping the original real-time beat-em-up combat that the series has since moved on from with Ichiban's new entries. This is likely to be a shorter adventure than RGG fans are typically used to, but likely no less good since that studio maintains a very high bar. Like a Dragon Gaiden arrives for all platforms bar the Switch on the 9th, and surprise surprise, it will be day one on Game Pass. That Tales of Arise DLC arrives on the 9th, I know Tales fans are very pumped for that one. The day after that, we get the wet fart that is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. The follow-up to the really good and really successful Modern Warfare 1 and 2 reboot is apparently pretty shit, at least when it comes to the single-player campaign. A handful of reviews in for this one already, and not a single one has cracked 5 out of 10. IGN absolutely skewered it, scoring at a 4 out of 10, saying, quote, "Underbaked, rehashed, and cobbled together from multiplayer parts, Modern Warfare 3's single-player campaign is everything a Call of Duty story mode shouldn't be," end quote. It should be noted that other outlets are holding fire on a final score for the title since they want the multiplayer to drop. but I've read plenty of other campaign reviews, and they all excoriate the quality of the offering, ranking it among the worst the series has ever seen. Not entirely surprising, given that this release wasn't meant to be a full-priced box offering. It was originally intended to be an off year for COD development, with Modern Warfare 3 being a sort of expansion for Modern Warfare 2, but surprise, Activision got greedy, and this is the best campaign they could squeeze out at short notice. I'm sure Phil Spencer is feeling really good about that $68 billion purchase right about now. Hogwarts Legacy finally arrives on the Nintendo Switch on the 14th. Going to be very interested to see how it runs on that platform. The Invincible Season 2 has just landed on Amazon Prime, and while we won't be getting an Invincible game anytime soon, we are getting one based on the spin-off. It's called Invincible Presents Adam Eve, and it's a visual novel that tells an original story in the Adam Eve storyline. I haven't actually watched this spin-off yet, so I don't know much about it, but the game is coming exclusive to PC on the 14th. Night Dive Studios are about to finish their great work remastering the Turok trilogy so that it may live forever. Turok 3 Shadow of Oblivion Remastered arrives for all platforms on the 14th, and it is easily the most ambitious remake of the three games, using all new graphical technology to revive the classic blocky glory Turok aesthetic. And finally, here's one that's been on my radar for literally years now, and yes, I'm a little biased, but how often do we get games set in Australia? Meet Broken Roads, a homegrown CRPG that sees you thrust into outback Australia to carve out a combative life for yourself under the corrugated iron and coolabah trees. It's narrative-led, so think more Disco Elysium than Baldur's Gate 3, but the writing talent on this one includes former BioWare staff, and the visuals look absolutely superb. Really hoping that this one pops off because it has all the makings of a cult classic. It arrives exclusive to the PC on the 14th. Hey now, put this on your radar, partner. Roll it, Stu. So you might have heard that they're making a Deep Rock Galactic roguelike spin-off called Deep Rock Survivor. It's looking really nice, great feedback from the Steam Next Fest demo, a very impressive package to look forward to sometime next year. Surprisingly though, the team that's making that is also making this. It's called Don't Die in the West, and it's an open-world cowboy life RPG. Build your own ranch, lasso your horse, engage in shootouts at dawn, and most importantly, waddle around with up to 3 friends, since this does support 4-player co-op. That was what really piqued my interest around this one, since most cowboy games are fairly solo affairs, so it's nice that you'll be able to wrangle in a few of your mates for the fun. This is actually dropping this week on the 10th, and right now there's a demo up for it on Steam, letting you try before you buy. If you do want to check it out, I've left a link to it over on my Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This On Your Radar stuff I've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and we're well into the month, so all of the sort of free stuff is now live. A few interesting things to shout out. Don't forget good old reliable Epic. They're still losing money according to Tim Sweeney's testimony this week in the Epic versus Google antitrust case. Still, the free games keep a-coming, since right now you can grab Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion, and later this week you'll be able to grab Golden Light, a first-person survival horror game that is apparently about meat. I don't know, man, that's just what it says. Prime Gaming continues its Bethesda giveaways this week with Rage 2. It's not a great game, but you know what? If they're giving it away as part of your Amazon Prime subscription, it's actually pretty good fun. It'll wear out its welcome by the end, but you do get a few hours of fun in this, especially with the shotgun, which I still maintain is the most satisfying shotgun I've ever fired in a video game. PS Plus Essential got its November update, and it's nothing to write home about. Mafia 2 Definitive is on there for PS4. The very odd and underwhelming Dragon Ball The Breakers is on there, also for PS4. The only PS5 game this month is Aliens Fireteam Elite, which definitely met a mixed reception. It's a co-op horde shooter that I think nailed the basics, and I enjoyed it, but plenty of people found it just a touch shallow and lacking in content, which is partly true. Either way, all 3 of those are now live for PS Plus subscribers. Last thing is a late addition to Game Pass. The absolutely superb Rollerdrome is being added to the service on November 28th. It's Tony Hawk meets Max Payne with a little bit of Ace Combat thrown in. If that sounds like a ridiculous genre salad, then you're absolutely right, but trust me, it totally works. If you're keen to learn more about this one, I'll leave a link to my review below the like button. Our feel-good story for the week involves a group of people who don't get enough love from the video games industry. I'm talking about our senior citizens. I mean, when was the last time you saw a gaming commercial featuring someone over the age of 30 playing said video game? Where is the prune juice flavored G Fuel, damn it? The golden oldies deserve to get heart palpitations too. I mean, in addition to the ones they normally get, of course. Luckily, good guy Nintendo refuses to leave the elderly by the wayside. Just this week, they've announced a plan to roll out Nintendo Switches to over 200 senior citizen centers, as well as games like Dr. Kawashima's Brain Training, Switch Sports, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Personally, I feel like old-timers would really like Smash, but we all know Nintendo's stance on non-sanctioned Smash tournaments, and it's highly likely that these seniors are going to get a pro league going with all the time they have on their hands. Jokes aside, this is actually pretty cool. It's nice that Nintendo is thinking about a section of the gaming community that is very often overlooked, but likely to become more important as we all age into that demographic, should we be so lucky. Alright, ladies and gents, that's the show for the week. Thank you so much for dropping by as always. Austin is off this week, taking a vacation. Lazy Zoomers. But Stu and I are here to hold down the fort with that RoboCop review later this week. Looking forward to talking more about that one, trust me. For now, could I ask you to do your boy a solid and like the video if you liked it? That is manna from heaven in the world of YouTube, and it really does help get the video out to more people without me having to resort to shameless clickbait. Also, if you'd like to come back next week, then be sure to subscribe and ding the bell. Only a few episodes left for the year as we race towards the holiday season, and with how huge 2023 has been, I think we can all do with a bit of a break. Thanks again for watching, and a big thanks to this week's sponsor, Manscaped. Right now, we're in the midst of an AI revolution. AI art, AI voices, AI music playlists. Seems like AI can do it all, right? Wrong, because there is one thing that AI can't do, and that is shave your balls. Thankfully, Manscaped are delivering the next leap in ball shaving technology with their all-new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, the most advanced ball trimmer in the history of the human species. That's right, your body hair will tremble in fear at the sight of it, for it knows it cannot withstand the two interchangeable blades, one of them for skimming off the top and the other new foil blade for a closer shave. The hair can try and run and hide, but it will not succeed, for the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra features dual LED spotlights to provide contrast on multiple skin tones. With that sort of illumination, there is nowhere for that wayward hair to hide. That's not all though, since the Lawnmower 5.0 also features 3 length setting combs, plus it's waterproof, making it safe to use in the shower and very easy to clean. The best place to pick up this new feat of technology and innovation is in the Performance Pack 5.0, which features the nose and hair ear trimming Weed Whacker 2.0, as well as the Crop Soother Aftershave Lotion and the Crop Preserver Anti-Chafe Ball Deodorant. Once they touch your sack, you'll never go back. Hell, Manscaped are feeling generous, so right now if you grab the Performance Pack 5.0, you'll also get some Manscaped boxes, very comfy, as well as the Shed 2.0 travel bag. To top all of this off, you can get 20% off plus free shipping with code SKILLUP at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with code SKILLUP at manscaped.com. I can promise you, you've never seen a ball trimmer that looks like a spaceship. True? True. Thank you Manscaped for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.